Virginia has officially declared the Constitution to be a state of emergency. Both your speech and self-defense rights are inherent threats to the blackface crown and will be minimized accordingly. Full exercise of them will be considered a criminal act. I wish I was exaggerating, but I'm not. The story is only escalating. With every chance to step back and respect the rights of Virginia citizens, Governor Ralph Northam and legislative Democrats instead doubled down with ever more infringements that leave everyone asking, do
you want the boogaloo? Because that's how you get the boogaloo, okay, folks?
The broad context here is, of course, that after winning narrow majorities in both chambers of the Virginia General Assembly, Democrats are prioritizing a package of new gun laws that are so imaginative, it's like they plagiarized David Hogg's diary. Ban so-called assault weapons, ban suppressors, red flag, only one handgun purchase per month, allowing cities to ban guns in certain places outright. There's even a bill to all but ban private indoor shooting ranges under consideration, at least large operations with 50 or more employees. This looks like mostly a shot at the NRA, and as of Thursday, several of these bills have already passed through the Senate. And if they get the rest of what they want, thousands of Virginians are positioned to become felons overnight. Instant criminals on account of the property that they legally owned yesterday now being illegal today. And that's why dozens of Virginia cities and counties have declared themselves Second Amendment sanctuaries, pledging not to enforce these unconstitutional laws. That is also why thousands of demonstrators under the leadership of the Virginia Citizens Defense League plan to protest at the state capitol building in Richmond on Monday. And they still will, but the question now becomes whether or not these protesters will obey the strict and constitutionally suspect constraints of the governor, who on Wednesday declared a state of emergency because he says he's seen threats of violence and plans for hate groups to attend. Among the many ironies here, this is the guy now warning you of hateful people who threaten your freedom and safety. Yeah, how about you take some of that state security money, Governor, and you instead buy a mirror and stare into it critically for a while, and then watch both freedom and tolerance soar to new heights in Virginia? No, of course not. Of course it's the peasantry who will have to make the personal sacrifices. If you plan to protest on Monday, you'll have to disarm, or at least they'll try to make you. Weapons from guns to baseball bats are now banned, and you'll have to demonstrate in a gated, confined space at the Capitol with a single entry point. You know, since if violence does actually happen, you can enjoy the stampede at the choke point. For safety reasons. Of course, police and state security personnel are exempt from these restrictions. They'll be carrying their weapons to protect the blackface crown. There are even reports of Virginia police importing their own killdozer variant. Presumably, they may need to bulldoze their own non-gated escape if things do get really bad. And that's predictable, of course, but it does make you wonder, if gun bans are actually effective, why would the governor need this additional security? Is he actually considering the possibility that those with criminal intent may not obey the state decree? He apparently has to protect himself from such possibilities, but you're not important enough for that luxury. Asked whether he even has the authority to make these sorts of restrictions, the governor doesn't really explain. Yes, I can do this because I did this.
Is there any question that you have the authority to do this? I think there was something passed in 2012 related to emergency declarations and the Second Amendment.
I have the authority as your governor to do this, and the intent of doing this is to keep Capitol Square and Virginians safe.
Well, that's not at all clear, actually. You, of course, have potential conflict with the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, obviously, but the Virginia state constitution states much the same. And Virginia state law was updated in 2012 to clarify that the governor cannot suspend the self-defense rights of the citizenry in an emergency, except for within government-designated shelters in such a state of emergency. But that's not what's happening here. This isn't a natural disaster. It's just people exercising their natural rights. We don't need to get lost in these legal weeds, though. That's one step beyond what's necessary, because we shouldn't automatically grant the core premise here in the first place. The Virginia Capitol is now under a declared state of emergency. But what exactly is the actual emergency? It really just depends on who you ask, and nobody has a specific, consistent answer. But Governor Northam does have media allies with a Costco pack of straws for grasping as needed. Northam held a half-hour press conference with the heads of different Virginia police agencies to announce this emergency declaration, but he never explained these supposed threats in detail. Asked by a reporter for specifics, Northam refused.
These threats that you've heard, about how many threats have there been, and are there specific group names that they came from?
I certainly am not going to address the specific threats. Some of these have actually been written by or about Greg from the Washington Post did.
Well, why certainly not? That seems like a fair trade if you're asking us to compromise constitutional rights. You should at least explain specifically why we have to make that sort of sacrifice and what harm would be done by being specific. Why wouldn't it help to have Virginians aware of the threat so they can be vigilant against it? It's not for security that he's not being specific. He's not being specific because there are no specifics. I looked at the Washington Post article he referenced. It was published 2 weeks ago, and all it says is that a few militia groups are planning to attend the protest. And it says a YouTuber warned without evidence that the state will cut the power grid to stop the army of protesters, among other false and exaggerated rumors. Well, I haven't seen the clip, but for the sake of argument, I can grant that those claims are false. Attending an event, even armed attendance, is not a threat. It's in compliance with the law. Similarly, exaggerated rumors are not threats. They are also in compliance with the law. But hey, speaking of evidence-free claims and exaggerated rumors,
Threats like storming our Capitol is one specifically. Weaponizing drones over our Capitol Square is another. There have been individuals on Capitol Square that have had surveillance operations looking at our entry and exit points.
wow, I'm convinced looking at the Capitol facility is now a presumed threat to the state. I had no idea I was a terrorist when I was looking for the bathroom on my 6th grade field trip. If physical invasion is the threat, put up barricades. If drones are the threat, make it a no-fly zone. But stripping citizens of the right to defend themselves will have no effect on either of these things. And since Ralph can't explain it, agenda-friendly media outlets and interest groups are going to try. But their case is so flimsy, they're reduced to patrolling the internet for memes from randos. This Salon article is linking to a handful of edgy boy tweets that mention the word boogaloo, which of course is now an ADL-designated hate term. The links are just small accounts with almost no interaction, as though the authors just searched Twitter for the term boogaloo and treated any results as the evidence they need. Well, some guy somewhere said the no-no word, that's it, case closed, we win. The SPLC has the case, though, as they've uncovered some meme page shared a picture of gallows that says government repair kit. Some guy on a Patriot Prayer Facebook page advocated shooting Ralph Northam, and some unknown Telegram channel posted the names of Jewish lawmakers in Virginia who are supporting the new gun laws. Never mind that none of these alleged posts are linked for you to evaluate for yourself. Never mind that none of them have any demonstrated connection to the protest organizers. It's just someone somewhere said a bad thing. This is flimsy post hoc evidence anybody can dig up involving any significant news story. The worst and most specific example I could find is some unnamed state official claiming a guy posted a photo of an AR with a caption saying there are great sight angles from certain buildings near Capitol Square. And I haven't seen that post because it's not linked either. But if that description is accurate, that sounds like it toes the line of an illegal threat. And that's really the point. That's a crime, so arrest the criminal. If there are so many credible threats are against Virginia law. They're against federal law if they're transmitted from out of state. So instead of punishing the law-abiding, why don't we spend some state resources and time pursuing the criminals, especially if they're so numerous as Northam alleges? There have been 0 arrests to date, despite Northam claiming to have knowledge specific enough to call the threats credible. No arrests except for 3 very conveniently timed arrests, now being twisted as though they are directly related. That was the claim when I turned on the news Friday morning.
Virginia on high alert. just days before thousands of gun rights activists are expected to rally at the state capitol. The FBI arresting 3 alleged members of a violent white supremacist group on gun charges. Law enforcement officials say the men had obtained weapons and discussed participating in the rally.
That coverage leads you to believe that the rally has some direct connection to the arrests and the charges. It doesn't. The Justice Department's release on the case, in fact, makes no mention of the rally whatsoever. The case is actually about a Canadian man who illegally entered the United States in August, which in all other contexts I'm told is no threat whatsoever, but I digress. He allegedly came here to organize and train with an organization called The Base, an apparent militant white nationalist group that was plotting attacks on black people and Jews, and the charges are for illegal entry into the country, harboring an illegal alien, and illegal manufacture, possession, and transport of a machine gun. None of that has anything to do with Monday's protest, but for the New York Times quoting of an anonymous source who says the men had discussed attending the event. Not that they were attending, not that they were plotting violence there, just that they discussed the event generally, with no additional detail. And just to be clear, it's not the FBI saying that. It's not the Justice Department saying that. It is just the New York Times saying that, and the rest of these media outlets are falling in line with this unsubstantiated narrative. You can draw your own conclusions about whether that's credible enough for you to constitute a credible threat. These arrests weren't made in connection to the rally. That is just a claim made to backfill the void of evidence for the governor's agenda, and that's also true for the rest of the supposed evidence cited as well. That is the worrisome precedent here. Even if you're totally on the other side of this one politically, you like these new gun laws in Virginia, you don't like the Second Amendment, you don't like the right to bear arms, consider how this precedent applies the next time the political roles reverse. Let's say Virginia is controlled by Republicans again in a few years, and they're trying to restrict abortion or undo environmental regulations or cut taxes in ways you don't like. And you and your friends are fired up, and you're going to head down to the state capitol and voice your opposition in protest. All they will have to do is scour the internet for a few randos who agree with you but have some unsavory things to say, and poof, that will be sufficient evidence to put your rights on the chopping block, or at least heavily restrict them. What's happening in Virginia isn't just a fight over self-defense rights. It's a fight over ownership of the state capitol itself. Who owns it? Virginians or King Blackface? Regardless of political perspective, we should all agree that Northam and every other state official in the country works for us. We do not work for them. That Capitol property is ours, not his. So be careful in advocating his strict control of it. You're advocating the surrender of your property too, and that's a serious sacrifice to make just to own your political opponents in the moment. You're owning yourself long term. If you're attending the rally on Monday, I say thank you, not just for defending your own rights and the rights of citizens in your state, but for defending my rights as well. Virginia will be a test case for eroding freedom across the country. If you get photos or video or any other evidence that's relevant to the truth of what's happening there, please do send it my way. My email address is in the description. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel. Always appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below, and especially over on Twitter. That is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to coming out and chat in my live streams. Those are linked down in the description. Looking forward to it. Goodbye.